Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, author of Living Beautifully and host of the Power Up podcast, where we share short, relatable ideas to impact and upgrade your everyday life. Sunday was a fast day. It's the beginning of what's called in the Jewish calendar the 3 weeks. Anyone here knows what the 3 weeks is about?
The mourning period of the destruction of both the temples and other disasters that have befallen the Jews.
We're now in a period of time in the Jewish calendar which is semi-mourning. We don't do things like listen to live music, have weddings, take haircuts, etc. Why are we doing it? Because this time period, it starts with a fast day called Shiva Asar Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, which commemorates when the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem. And obviously at that point, they could infiltrate Jerusalem. And it ends with the 9th of Av, the fast of the 9th of Av, when we commemorate the destruction of both temples, as well as many other Jewish tragedies that happened throughout Jewish history. Now let's try and wrap our heads around it, right? So here we are, 2025, and, we haven't had a temple for years. We've got, thank God, a thriving Jewish community. We've got synagogues, we've got temples, we've got everything, right? What are we mourning when we're mourning the loss of the temple?
It's also the relationship. We're mourning the relationship that we have with the temple. We have a stronger, it's easier to have a relationship with Hashem because it's self-evident right there. Without the temple, that changed the core of what it is to be Jewish.
You brought up some very good points, and I want to elaborate on the different points that you brought up, right? Sometimes I'll have someone that comes to me and will feel that, I was once spiritually inspired, and now I'm kind of spiritually depleted. I see smiles around the table, right? Anyone can relate to that? I see lots of nods around the table, right? It happens. It happens to all of us, I think. We feel spiritually depleted. What do you do? Okay, come to class.
If you help others, it reminds us of our purpose and our connection to Hashem and to each other. And
so you're all saying great things, right? Get a spiritual coach, help someone else, go to a class, goes camping, right? The Rambam actually says that one of the ways that we build our relationship with God is by appreciating the world around us and appreciating the creator of the world around us. We have to take that next step as well. How much does it help? Let's be honest. It helps a bit, right? Yeah. It helps a bit. It's kind of, if I can give an example, right? You have a phone. I don't know if people are like me, but let their battery drain all day, right? And your battery's at like 7% or 3% at some point. You look at it, right? Yes. So what do? You plug it in, you leave it in for an hour or two, and it goes up to 100%. When we had a temple, it was the equivalent of plugging the phone in, right? We could go there and it would boost our battery. I don't know if it was 100%. There's always going to be free choice and whatever, but it was like a fast charge. Nowadays, yes, we have all these things, but we have to work hard, and it charges it a little bit, and then you have to do the next thing, and you have to constantly, but we don't have that temple anymore where we can go and be charged fully the way that we did then. So that's what we're mourning, commemorating. What was it about the temple? And I think both Jessica and Marla hinted at this a little bit, is that there was a clarity there, right? There was a presence of God there. And in fact, there's two phases in Jewish history. There was the first phase of Jewish history where there was prophecy, where God's presence was apparent in the world. And then there's a second phase of Jewish history, which we're in right now, where God's presence is not apparent in the world. You can see God if you look for him and you train yourself to become sensitive to see it. You can also very easily not see God in the world, right? I'm going to take the example, Chava, that you gave, right? You can go camping and it could be either a very physical experience or it could be a spiritual experience. But you have to be the one to kind of make that extra step to make it into a spiritual thing. Otherwise, you can just go and see, oh, it's a beautiful campsite, it's a beautiful mountain, it's a beautiful sunset, it's a beautiful sunrise, whatever it is, and not necessarily say, oh wow, there's a God that made all of this. So there was a clarity there. What's fascinating to know about this is that in Jewish law, before we eat, you make a blessing. Does anyone know when these laws were instituted? Same time as the destruction of the Second Temple. Why? Right, which incidentally is the same time when prophecy ended. Why? Before that, what, they weren't grateful? They didn't, pick up an apple and say thank you to God? They did, but it was spontaneous. It wasn't like structured like it is now. Why? Why was it that way? Back in those days when they had a temple and when they had prophecy, someone picked up an apple and they knew, they had clarity that this was a gift to them from God. We pick up an apple, what do we see? We see an apple. That's it. So we have to make a blessing and remind ourselves that there is a God who gave us this apple as a gift to us and as a source of blessing in our life, right? We help ourselves to a schnitzel dinner, and what do we see? We see schnitzel. If we're grateful people, we'll thank the chef who made it. But what we don't see, and what the blessing comes to remind us, is that, hold on a second, there's a God that loves you and coordinated and arranged that you should have this delicious meal. So they didn't need to have the structure of blessings because it was clear. And it goes way beyond food as well, right? We see another person. What do we see? You're in a relationship with someone else. You're talking to someone else. What do you see? You see a human being with their flaws and their annoyances, and you think about what you're going to respond to them. What do we miss most of the time when we're dealing with other people? The divine spark within that other person. Imagine if we lived in a world where you could relate to other people as a person with a divine spark, right? Soul to soul. It's a different world. Our relationships would be different. It's not just the energy of the person, but the fact that this person in front of me is a creation of God, has a godly soul, has purpose and value, right? It doesn't matter what they're at or where they're holding right now. But this is a human being who God created, put in this world for a purpose, who has a godly soul, right? Like, we relate to each other differently when we remember that. When we can remember, that this person that I'm having a conversation with is here for a purpose, or this person who's pulling out in front of me when I'm driving is also a human being and also has a purpose, and we forget that in relationships. We forget the value, and we just don't have that clarity anymore, and it hurts. It's kind of like we're living in this cloud that clouds everything, that makes an apple just look like an apple, that makes a person just look like a person, as opposed to, wow, this is another human being. God created this human being. God put this human being in my life for a purpose, right? And when we had that, it was different, right? So that's what so I wanted to spend the rest of the time that we have together looking at a little bit of a glimpse of what was life in the temple.
No women miscarried because of the smell of the holy meat. The holy meat never spoiled. No fly was seen in the slaughterhouse. The Kohen Gadol never had an accidental seminal discharge on Yom Kippur. The rains did not extinguish the fire burning upon the altar. The wind did not disperse the column of smoke rising from the altar. No disqualifying problem was discovered in the Omer offering, the 2 loaves or the showbread. They stood crowded but had ample space in which to prostrate themselves. No snake or scorpion caused injury in Yerushalayim, and no man ever said to his fellow, the overnight lodging in Yerushalayim is not sufficient for me.
Thank you. If you had to kind of summarize the theme, what would you say? The laws of nature were suspended in the temple, right? And interestingly, it was like the world before Adam sinned, right? The world before Adam sinned it wasn't subject to like decay and deterioration, right? That's what Adam's sin introduced into the world, death and decay and deterioration. But in the temple, it was the laws of nature were suspended, right? The meat never spoiled, didn't attract flies. It was all these things that that happened. We're going to look at a couple of them, a couple of the miracles, and really look at how they give us a message for our lives today. So the first thing is that the rain did not extinguish the fire burning upon the altar. So there was an altar outside in the courtyard, and there was a continual fire that was burning on it. Now it would happen that it would rain. And there was a miracle that happened that even though it rained, the rain didn't extinguish the fire. Now, God could have done anything. Why didn't he make a miracle that it doesn't rain on top of the altar? What's the significance of the miracle being that it rained and the rain didn't extinguish the fire? Hebrew word for rain is geshem. There's another Hebrew word, gashmias, which comes from the same root word as geshem, rain, which means materialism, physicality. And the message that this is kind of trying to teach us is that in our lives, we often have conflicting forces, right? We have the force of the materialism, physicality, living in the world. And we also have, what do you think the fire represents? Spirituality, right? The passion, the enthusiasm for spirituality. And what happens sometimes is that we can get overwhelmed by life, right? By just the pure physicality of living life, whether it's, just the physical needs that we have to take care of, or whether it's our work, or whatever it is that we can get overwhelmed us. And the message from here is telling us that just like the fire never got extinguished by the rain, we have to work that we don't get overwhelmed by the physicality and let that extinguish the passion and enthusiasm we have for spirituality. I'll share with you a story of that someone I actually know. It happened to him. So he's a businessman, and he was traveling to the East Coast to have some business meetings with different people. He was very particular about davening with a minyan. He would try and daven as much as he could with a minyan. So one day he goes for shacharit, for the morning services, and he's there, and they get 10 people there. So they just have a minyan, and it takes much longer than he thinks it's going to be. And the problem is that he has a meeting right afterwards. So he's left with this dilemma. If I leave this minyan now, then they're not going to have a minyan. But if I don't leave it, I'm going to be late for my business meeting. And there's he's meeting with a potential investor who he's going to ask to invest in his money. He shows up late. It doesn't look good. So what does he do? He's, what? I'm gonna stay. I'm here. I'm gonna stay. I'm not gonna ruin the minyan for everyone else, and I'm gonna stay until the end of services. He stays till the end of services. Gets in his car afterwards, rushes across town to where his meeting is. He gets to the meeting and he meets this investor, and he sees that the investor was the person that he had been sitting next to in shul. They'd never met each other before. So the investor looks at him and says, "I know you." And he says, "We don't need to have this meeting." He says, "The fact that you stayed when you knew you had a meeting afterwards, and you stuck to your values, your value, right? Your principles, your values, that shows me that you're a trustworthy person, and I'm in."
If only it were that easy.
It's not that easy. Right? It's not that easy. And I think a lot of times we don't see that instant connection, which is why it makes it. I think what Bear's saying is that this guy, when he's sitting in shul and he's praying, he doesn't know the end of the story, right? For all he knows, the story's going to follow the laws of nature, that he's going to be late and the investor's going to be unimpressed that you're asking me to invest in your business and you can't even show up on time, right? And I think that's what makes it hard for us. If we knew that I can stick to my values and it's all going to work out okay, right? Not it's all going to work out okay, because we know that it's going to work out okay, but it's going to work out how I want it to work out, right? Then it would be easier to stick to our values. But it's the fact that we don't know. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. It could just be that he would have stuck to his values and done it, and he would have lost the deal over it. It doesn't make quite as good a story, so it probably wouldn't end up in a class like this. But it happens, right? It happens a lot of times. You do the right thing, and why does it happen that way?
Because if it doesn't if it always happens positive, then you don't have, that leaves out choice. So God gives you choice that something good or bad could happen by doing the right thing, because otherwise everyone would do the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, we would have no free choice. If 100% of the times you did the good thing and you won that business deal, or you won that investment, or you got whatever it is, like, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, I'll do the right thing, right? But we live in a world, and we live in a time period in Jewish history where it's hard to see God's hand in this world, right? That's our work. Our work is to have faith and to have trust and to do the right thing, even when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Let me ask you a question. What can help us do the right thing when we're overwhelmed with the physicality of life? And you can put whatever into that category that you want. You can put work, you can put just daily living, you can put financial pressures, whatever. Everyone's going to have different things to put into it. But what can help us not get overwhelmed by the physical day-to-day of life and keep our spiritual enthusiasm going?
Prayer.
That everything is by Hashem, and the good, the bad, the ugly, I've learned to say this too is for the good. Give yourself some slacks. A lot of times I feel like we get in a position in which we're harder on ourselves than God is. And so giving ourselves some slack can also ease up some of the pressure.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. And this is the one that I wanted to look at is, stood crowded, but had ample space in which to prostrate themselves. So basically, 3 times a year, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, all the Jews would go up to Jerusalem for the temple service, and they would all go into the temple. Now, obviously, it was very crowded. It was a miracle on its own that there was enough standing room for everyone, but the miracle expanded because when everyone was standing, it was tight and cramped and whatever, but when it came down to bow down at certain points in the temple service, there was room for everyone to bow down. Now let's see if you can figure out what the symbolism of it is. If you think about it, everyone was standing upright and it was crowded and cramped. And the same things happen in our relationships as well, right? When everyone is like sort of sticking to their guns and their egos in the room, then it's crowded, right? It can be crowded. But what happens is if each one can bend a little bit, right, can compromise a little bit, then what happens is all of a sudden there opens up this space for both of the people, or however many people are in the relationship, to be there. Because when we're all upright and like protecting my space and my views and my whatever, then there isn't so much space. But when we can compromise a little bit, that's when we find that there's more space for other people in our relationships. When is it good to compromise? When is it not good to compromise? We're talking about the virtues for compromising, and then you're telling me that it's not always good to compromise. So when is it good to compromise?
It depends what you're compromising, because what came to mind is like a woman that's being abused. She shouldn't compromise, but to get along with this guy, I'll be abused.
That's a great example.
Compromising your values, you don't want to compromise your values.
What you said about values is true, right? Like, we don't want to compromise when it comes to our values, right? You don't have to compromise in your values, right? I think that when it comes to practical situations, that's when it's very good to have someone in your life, like a mentor, a rabbi, a rebbe, and someone like that you can actually discuss these things with, right? It's nuanced, but I think it's a good guiding thing is to have with us is that when it comes to our preferences and our likes and our dislikes and the things like that, those are very good places to compromise, right? Yes, Ren, and then I'm going to end with the story.
That maybe you could suggest, because like for me in my work setting, when people start gossiping or they're chit-chatting about stuff that seem a little frivolous to me, like I'm in the middle of noticing the war, for example, I just like sigh because I feel like suckered from my work associates, and they are my friends, and I feel sad because I have no choice. I have to do what I feel is right. I'm not going to gossip. I'm just not. But it does it does make a separation. But is there another word besides compromise?
So you're choosing not to gossip in that moment. right? Because
Constantly all day.
Right.
Not just the moment.
Yeah.
And it separates me from all my work associates, who I really like. It just like sets me apart. And
I think
Well, that's the whole
that-
idea.
and if I can share with you something about that, is that as Jews, we're supposed to be apart, right? We're supposed to be an Ar Lagayim, right, which is a light to the nation. If you look at the lights are all separated from the ceiling, right? There's always a separation because you can't light up if you're part of it, right? We are a little bit apart. So that choosing to live to a higher standards is a good thing, in my opinion, right? That and I think that the reframe perhaps is that it's not that I'm not doing this, but I'm making a choice. I'm making a choice to live up to my values, and my values are that I don't gossip, right? Like I'm making a choice here to be true to my values.
I think they probably respect you for that, because if you were not there, to them, it would be like this accepted thing. In fact, you're probably making them feel a little uncomfortable.
And I'm not sure how much of your responsibility it is how it lands, right? Like, but if you're choosing to live according to your value, which is not to gossip, think about the person that they're gossiping about and how they feel that you're choosing not to, right? Gossip is extremely destructive. It's not a simple thing, right? Like, imagine if you were the person that was the person they were gossiping about, right? What would you want your coworkers to do? You would hope that there's going to be at least one Renee in the room, hopefully more, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think it's about how we reframe it, right? You're making a choice to protect your values there. And I want to end with one beautiful story. So Rav Lau, when he was becoming a bar mitzvah boy, so he was preparing for the Torah reading. Now, it happened to be that in the shul that he was preparing for, there was a Holocaust survivor who used to read the Torah reading every week. And whatever happens, someone forgot to tell him, or many people forgot to tell him, that this boy was going to be reading for the Bar Mitzvah Parsha. And it comes to shul on Shabbat, and there's a big crowd that have come to hear the boy, and the Holocaust survivor gets up to read the Torah. And someone goes over to him and says, this boy is going to be reading the Parsha, right? It's his Bar Mitzvah. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, this is kind of my thing, right? Like, this is what I do. And, finally there's a crowd here to listen to me. And he hadn't been told, and he was thrown off. So he had just been told it, right? So wait till the thing. So what happens is Rav Lau, who was 13-year-old boy at the time, goes over to the Holocaust survivor and says, listen, I'm still young. I, please God, will have many opportunities to read from the Torah and to perform in front of others. You go read it this week. And Rav Lau gave up, right? He compromised on reading for the Torah, even though he had done it. And again, it's a story that I'm going to share with you. So the story, it ends beautifully because we can see the ending, right? We can see that, yes, it happened to be that Rav Lau was given many, many opportunities to speak and perform and in front of others. But on that Shabbat, he gave it up, right? And it's just a beautiful thing to see how we have that capacity to I think compromise. And if I can reframe your situation, Renee, is when you're choosing not to gossip, you're choosing to side with the person who's being gossiped about, right? And you're compromising your feeling of being a part of everyone in order to uphold your values and protect that person that's being gossiped about. So those are a couple of ideas and concepts that we can hopefully take with us through the week. This idea of what we're missing in the temple, we're missing that clarity that that we could see the God in everything, and that to try not to let the physical world our physical lives overwhelm and dampen our spiritual enthusiasm. And finally, to, when we can, and when it doesn't cost us our values, to compromise for the sake of our relationships.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your feedback, and if you enjoyed this episode, you'll love my book, Living Beautifully: how to bring meaning, joy, and love into your life based on the timeless wisdom of Pirkei Avot. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.